Truth lovers, welcome to another edition of Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet and around the world on satellite radio and on over 140 radio stations in the U.S. via the Liberty Radio Network. We have an incredibly interesting guest coming on. He's a guest that numerous viewers and listeners have asked to be on our program because he is so interesting and he's done so much research and he's gone through such an interesting thing in his life to get to the point where he is now. And he's now really getting a lot of great information out there. And you may or may not agree with all the information, but this information is very interesting. And he just finished up his Free Your Mind conference in Philadelphia, which he founded, and I hear it went very well. There was a number of past Anarchast guests there, including Luke Rudowski and Derek Brose and a number of other people. And I hear it was very, very well attended, and a lot of people really enjoyed it. And like I said, this is a very interesting story. You're definitely going to enjoy hearing how he became an anarchist. So let's ask him right now, Mark Passio, how did you become an anarchist?
Jeff, thanks so much for inviting me onto the program. Yeah, it is an interesting story that probably hasn't been undergone by many. In my past, I grew up in a traditional, pretty standard Roman Catholic Italian family from South Philadelphia. And, you know, they were the kind of people that never really questioned too much about the status quo. You know, they didn't ask many questions and they just went along to get along. And I accepted without much questioning myself back then in my youth a large amount of the religious indoctrination and dogma that I had been given by my family and school teachers, etc. I guess in my late grade school years and early high school years, I really began to question those dogmatic religious belief systems. And because I lacked a lot of the knowledge about how religion was, you know, astrotheological in nature and was a, you know, large control system. The anger about learning, you know, about a lot of the falsities of my religious indoctrination earlier on in my life kind of turned to a lot of hatred. And I wanted to gravitate or find the exact polar opposite, the antithesis of those belief systems. And so I gravitated toward the occult, but I specifically gravitated toward dark occultism, as I refer to it. And in my case, it was LaVeyan Satanism. Satanism, the ideology of Satanism as put forward by Anton LaVey in the Satanic Bible. When I became involved in dark occultism in general, I began espousing the satanic ideology. And the Church of Satan actually heard about me through writings and music that I had put forward that were, you know, expressive of the satanic worldview. And so LaVey himself appointed me a priest within his organization and wanted me to start what they call a grotto. That's, you know, their word for a coven in my area. And I never really looked at Satanism as kind of a collective ideology. So I declined that offer, but I became involved in some other grottos in this area, in this tri-state region. And upon attending some of them, I began to understand that there were people in high-level positions of power and influence in every single institutional walk of life that we can imagine that were populated by Satanists. You know, at these grotto rituals, lawyers would show up, you know, politicians, chiefs of police, judges, bankers,
all the worst kind of people,
school teachers, doctors, you name it. Every walk of life, media, law enforcement, entertainment, technology, medicine, education, you name the institution, there were Satanists in those institutions at high levels of influence and power in every one. And they were not working separately, you know, to just increase their own personal power and influence by studying occult knowledge and how the mind can be manipulated and influenced, which is a huge part of dark occultism. They were working together toward a common collective agenda, which was to increase their own power, their collective power, and their group's power, their network's power, at the expense of everybody else's rights and freedoms. And they were very open about that agenda, sharing that at these rituals and grotto meetings. The awareness that dawned on me that I had become at an admittedly very low level with such an organized syndicate that was working to destroy human freedom made me take a step back and realize my conscience could not allow me to proceed any further with that. And I wanted to do my best to try to explain to people how this network was operating. And so I became involved in, speaking on what Satanism really is, not the Hollywood variant of it that a lot of people believe that it is, but what the actual real tenets of organized Satanism are, and how this dark religion is really the religion that's ultimately controlling the world. The people in the corridors of power absolutely take this mindset and practice the tenets of this religious ideology, in many cases, whether they even realize it or not. Another big part of my work is helping the public to understand that in many cases they have themselves subscribed to satanic ideology without even understanding it, because of how pervasively it is put forward in the media and in popular culture. So ultimately, recognizing, getting a little sneak peek behind the corridors of power, so to speak, and recognizing how evil the mindset was at that level. And again, admittedly, I was only operating at a very low level. It goes far beyond the level of involvement in just getting your foot into, the Church of Satan and attending some grotto rituals, etc. Just that level that I became involved with, I saw the level of evil that was operating, and my conscience wouldn't allow me to go forward with it. And then further studies, of course, helped me to understand the complete illusion and total illegitimacy of all forms of authority and control over other people. And that was the, kind of the long winding road to me becoming an anarchist myself and teaching the principles of natural law, of real anarchy, and of truth.
That's wonderful. And I've asked over 200 anarchists how they became an anarchist. And you're the first one who said you came to anarchy through your experience in Satanism. But although I'm laughing here, but this is a very serious topic, and it's one that I don't know a lot about. And that's why I'm so glad to have you on, because
Sure.
Totally truthfully, honestly, I don't know a lot about Satanism, and I don't know a lot about what these people do and why they do it. So that's why I'm so glad to have you on and hear about it. I think for your sort of average person, they hear that, all these major power people, these politicians and all these, you named off a number of horrible people, including lawyers and politicians and police officers and all these horrible people. And you say, some of them are Satanists. I think a lot of people would say, that guy's crazy. What Satanism? I don't think that even really exists or anything like that. And you don't really see it too much. And that's, I think, something you can talk on is,
sure,
like, you never see like Barack Obama walking into a Satanist meeting. You don't see it on YouTube. It's somehow they've kept this sort of under the rug a bit. Explain.
It's very covert.
Yeah.
Covert, very covert. They want to put on the austere, the veneer, I should say, of being good, upstanding, moral individuals, when in fact, behind the scenes, this old religion is operating. And I think the best way for me to explain this is to help people to understand when they chose the name Satanism, or at least in the modern world, this religion could be referred to as Satanism. They are taking this trapping, they're taking this imagery from the Christian ideology of Satan, the devil. Okay, this is a deliberate thing because they're standing against a lot of the value systems in, I would say, esoteric Christianity, not the value systems of what we would call the organized church of the modern day. Okay, the idea of the golden rule, of treating others as you would prefer to be treated, or in the apophatic or negative stance of the golden rule, don't do to others the kind of actions that you don't want done unto yourself. That's how I explain the golden rule, I feel, in less ambiguous terms. So they stand against that. They stand for the principles of self-preservation and self-advancement, even against morality or against anyone else's natural rights. Natural rights be damned. If I benefit, I'm going to do it, even if somebody else is harmed in the process. This is actually what I would call the first tenet of modern Satanism. Now, again, they're taking this word from this Christian, worldview, Satan, because it means the adversary in the original Hebrew. It means the one who opposes, and they're basically opposing the real natural order of natural law, which is the underlying moral laws that that we work in conjunction with through our free will, and then these body of laws go to work upon our decision making and our behaviors, and then we receive an experience in return. It's people have called this consequentialism in past philosophies. I like the term natural law. It's simply the universal moral law that exists inherently in nature and that our free will works in conjunction with. However, they want to turn that upside down on its head, and they want to be rulers. They want to be the law, you know. So the idea of man's law, supplicating and replacing natural law, is ultimately the goal of the satanic ideology. And as I explain them, the major tenets or belief systems of this ideology are self-preservation, regardless of who is harmed in the process. It doesn't really make a difference about rights. Okay, if you stand to benefit, that's what's good for you, then do it. That kind of out of control self-preservation or survivalistic mindset is their ultimate tenet, self-preservation as the highest law of the universe. Secondly, they believe in moral relativism, which is the idea that there is no such thing as an objective standard of right or wrong behavior, that right and wrong are simply constructural ideas that exist only in the human mind, and we may decide for ourselves based on a whim or a preference or a like or a dislike what right is and what wrong is, versus them being actually based inherently in behaviors that either do not cause harm to another, in which case it would be a right, or behaviors which do cause harm to other sentient beings, in which case those would be transgressions against natural law or simply wrongdoings. So the idea of moral relativism is there's no such thing as true right or wrong. We get to make that up, and you see this reflected time and time again in so-called man's law, the idea that something can be, right here, and over here across an imaginary border, it's suddenly wrong and punishable by having your freedom taken away. This is moral relativism at its finest, and a clear example of it in man's law. The third major tenet of ideological Satanism is social Darwinism. And of course, this takes the idea of, macrobiological Darwinian evolution into the human social domain, and postulates that those whose genes, quote unquote, got them to where they are, have a right to rule the roost. They have a right to rule over the people who are less successful or less, advanced in status in society. And that's somehow a good and right thing to follow and, to keep in place. So social Darwinism is a big tenet within Satanism. And then finally, you can see I guess you could call it the logical conclusion, if you would, of subscribing to self-preservation as the highest standard, regardless of who is harmed in the process. Moral relativism, no such thing as objective right or wrong. We get to make that up. And social Darwinism, those who are ultimately the most ruthless in society and have gotten to the highest levels of power in society should basically ruthlessly rule over others. You get to the fourth tenet of the satanic ideology, which is eugenics. And eugenics is the idea that since man gets to rule the roost, a small class of people get to rule the roost over the bulk of the population, then ultimately they can decide for themselves who gets to populate the world and continue their genes, and who does not. Or in other words, who gets to live and who must die. That's essentially eugenics in a nutshell, and these are the four major ideological tenets of the satanic religion. Now, if you look at those tenets, you will see that they're operating on a vast scale in society. How many people are just purely selfish and don't care about who they have to step on to get what they want? How many people don't think there's any kind of an objective standard for right and wrong behavior and just think that's something that exists only in the human mind and we can make that up and decide those things for ourselves? How many people believe in social Darwinism, and think, oh, there's no higher power that is, setting law into place in the universe that governs the conduct of behavior? No, it's man that can set a social structure rigidly and then coerce that into place, keep that into place by coercion and violence. And how many people think that there should be population reduction and population control, which is just a euphemism for eugenics? I mean, this belief system is really worldwide, and it has infected the population at large. It's not operating on just this small, tiny elite class of dark occultists that have the reins of power in the institutions, but they have actually propagated this ideology down to the people that they ultimately want to rule over. And that is how they get the tactical advantage in the mind to rule over somebody else, because this religion given to the population is really a religion to prepare the population for their slavery. So they want people subscribing to it on a much, much lower level, what I call mini-me Satanism. It's the watered down, very, truncated version, that is given to the population. You could call it the exoteric version of Satanism versus the true esoteric variant that is practiced by people who are really deeply involved in dark occultism for real. They understand how natural law works. They understand how this ideology works, how they fully subscribe to it, fully in the know, but they give a watered down variant to the population that they want to rule over, because this is the mindset people need to be in to allow themselves to be ruled ultimately.
Incredibly interesting, and I have so many questions. Let me just start with, when I was younger, I sort of grew up in around a sort of a Christian or Catholic sort of, my mom was into that sort of a thing. And I was sort of like you, I was sort of rebelling because I don't like anyone telling me that this is how things are. I need to see it or discover it for myself. And so for much of my adult life, I just sort of put anything to do with like religion or faith or spirituality or any of those sort of things. I just didn't think about it. And then it's only been about in the last year that I've done so many things in my life, and I've discovered so many things that I've been just amazed to discover, like 9/11 and how the financial system and monetary system works and all these sort of things. And it's been just like rabbit hole after rabbit hole. And I have eventually just sort of reached a point, and I'm like, what is going on? And you have the website, of course, What on Earth is Happening? So you're definitely the guy to ask here. What is going on? Like, what is really going on? Let me ask you just to start. You started off, you were sort of indoctrinated into a certain faith or religion, and then you rebelled against it and went to the other side, and then you saw what those people were doing. Of course, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, what do you think about the Bible? I'd be like, oh, it just sounds like a silly book, fairy tales or something. And I still don't have a real solid opinion on the Bible, and so I want to ask you about that. But it seems like what they were writing about in the Bible is what you're sort of talking about. It's like this has been going on for thousands of years, this sort of struggle. And Jesus, interesting enough, with the Golden Rule, he essentially was an anarchist. He was fighting against government, which is, I've always said government is evil, but I didn't fully realize it was satanically evil. So this is all sort of information that I'm trying to compute in my own brain. So where are you at with what is really going on?
Mind control is ultimately going on. What the occult is, people hear that word and they shy back from it, and it's a conditioned response. I think one of the ultimate forms of mind control is the obfuscation of the true meaning of words. And, over the years, if enough people tell people the word occult means evil, it means bad, it means satanic, it means, stay clear from it, people will just believe that by rote and accept it without questioning it, or even looking up the origin of the word, for example. You look up the origin of the word occult in any decent etymology dictionary, it comes from the Latin verb occultare. And occultare in Latin means to hide, to conceal, or to keep secret. Okay, to veil from view. That's all the occult is. It's knowledge that has been deliberately hidden or kept secret from the public's view, so that a small amount of people, in the deep understanding of that knowledge, can manipulate the people who remain in ignorance of it. And you understand that, what the occult knowledge actually is information which, if the public do not have, they are very open to manipulation and control. Because what the knowledge the occult contains is knowledge about how the human mind, how the human psyche works and operates, and then what the deep-seated human motivations are, how a person's behavior is likely to go under certain conditions if their mindset is in a certain condition as well. And that explains, if you really know everything there is to know about those dynamics, you can really understand how somebody could be manipulated or steered in a certain direction towards certain behavior. That's ultimately what dark occultism practices. It practices the techniques of manipulation and the steering of the mind to bring about outcomes that they want to bring about within the population without having to use direct physical violence against that population. They're doing it through the steering of the mind. So that's ultimately what's really going on. And unless we understand the techniques, unless we study the very same techniques that are being used against us, we're not going to understand how we're being manipulated. So it's kind of like a form of learning about this is kind of like a form of psychic self-defense. It's about, raising the, or installing antivirus software in the mind, you might call it, okay, to be able to protect against these tactics. And they're multifaceted, and they're physical and they're non-physical. They work through the mind. They work through putting certain substances out there in society through food and water and so-called medication. So it's a mind, body, and spiritual attack program that we have to be on guard against. We have to be vigilant and understand how it works. Then we can start to shield ourselves, to steel ourselves against it, and not be affected by it as much. So that's a huge part of it. But, the understanding that this is a religion that ultimately lies behind government and the financial system. A lot of people in the political movement, the so-called truth movement, the freedom movement, they understand the corruption that is out there. They understand the financial machinations that are going on amongst the financial elitists. But many of them are quite reluctant to look deeper and look at the occult aspects of what really lies behind the power structure. And I think I've seen this belief system to entail the notion that if I don't believe in certain belief systems, somehow they can't really affect me, or even beyond that, they can't be real. They can't really be operating in a widespread way, especially if I don't see it in a widespread way. Well, of course, these people are doing the worst things imaginable to other human beings. They don't want to be known. They want to remain secret. They want their identities shielded as much as possible. The thing people have to understand about belief systems is it doesn't matter whether we ourselves subscribe to these belief systems. I just gave you 4 major ideological tenets of what I consider the religion of Satanism that's operating at the highest levels of power. And I do not subscribe to any of those belief systems. I don't believe self-preservation is the highest aspiration that mankind should be seeking or living in their lives. I believe morality and living in harmony with the will of creation is the highest aspiration that we can achieve. I am not a moral relativist. I am a moral objectivist. I am a moral absolutist. I do not subscribe to the poison worldview of moral relativism because I understand that's the ideology that takes us into slavery in the first place. I am not a social Darwinist. I'm not even a macrobiological Darwinist, okay? So I don't subscribe to social Darwinism at all. I think that's a deplorable ideology that, again, if you accept, you believe there should be a class of masters and a class of slaves. And I don't accept those things or believe that they should be in place. So I'm not a social Darwinist, and I'm not a eugenicist because I don't believe anybody else has the right to decide, who lives and who dies at their whim. Everybody has natural rights, and the first, chief, and primary among them is the right to life. So, I don't subscribe to any of those belief systems of this religion, which is what it is. By the etymological term of religion, where it comes from is religare, the verb in Latin, which means to tie back, to hold back, or to bind, to thwart from forward progress by tying up. That's what all false religion does. It ties us back from the truth. It holds us back from an accurate understanding of how things are really working. And Satanism is one of the religions. The cultural religions are among them. Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, etc. You could count the monetary system as a religion. You can count the New Age movement as a religion. I think politics is a religion. I think authority in general, the belief in authority, is a very powerful and destructive, violent violent religion. Government is a religion, and Satanism is a religion. And, the point I'm trying to make here is no one needs to subscribe to an ideological belief system for others to subscribe to it, believe in it very deeply, and act upon it and base their behaviors upon that belief system. Whether you know deep inside their mind what they believe or not, that doesn't mean these beliefs aren't out there. So it's a very naive and dangerous and slippery slope to go down to say, because I don't believe in a particular ideology, or I think that's crazy, or I think that's out there, that other people aren't operating on that belief system and acting upon it and having a very profound influence in the world based on how they're acting upon it.
Yeah, certainly Larken Rose, who I believe lives around your area there, past Anarchast guest, he, of course, wrote, I forget the exact title, but essentially says statism is the world's most dangerous superstition or religion. And I agree with that because that has been behind every sort of heinous thing in history. And most people don't even see it. That book is just a fantastic book. Everybody should have already familiarized themselves with The Most Dangerous Superstition by Larken Rose, without a doubt. And as I understand, I'm not 100% sure of this, I think he was intending on calling it at first The Most Dangerous Religion, but he opted for The Most Dangerous Superstition. But in fact, statism is the most dangerous religion in the world. I call it a cult outright. I say it's a cult belief system, the difference between just a false religion, which leads you down the wrong path and holds you back from truth, versus a cult is a cult's beliefs are dangerous to other people who do not subscribe to that belief system. And that is exactly what government or statism is. Yeah, and the most dangerous part about it is most people don't even realize it is a religion or a superstition. You go to these, or you watch these people in these political campaigns, and they're treating Barack Obama like it's God, and they're almost like praying and praising him, and but they don't see it as a religion, but it is. It's super dangerous. It's killed, what, 500 million people last century alone, but it's never really talked about. It's like, we have to get rid of this cult. There's this guy somewhere in the woods with like 10 people. We have to blow them up because they're dangerous. It's like, you're the dangerous ones.
And it's worldwide. It's the cult of statism is worldwide. Yeah.
Let me ask you, because I started getting into a lot of this stuff through, as I mentioned, finance and economics, and that's why I started the Dollar Vigilante, because I wanted people to understand what was happening in the monetary system and the financial system that wasn't really out there back then. And a lot of things I used to say even 5 years ago were, a lot of people called me crazy, and now it's actually becoming sort of like, yeah, we know. So things are changing fast in terms of awareness of these things. Let me ask you about Freemasonry. I've always been curious about this. There's also things like the Skull and Bones. I want to ask you, how are all these things related? Of course, if you just look at the back of a U.S. $1 Federal Reserve note, a $1 bill, there is a pyramid with an all-seeing eye on it, which is, I believe, a Masonry symbol.
It is.
So it's not like we're making this stuff up. This is like, look in your pocket. You've got a Mason symbol right in your pocket. Explain to us a little bit about how all these things are related.
Well, secret society networks are definitely connected in at the highest levels with what I would call the worldwide satanic network. And it's a loose conglomeration of different networks and organizations. People can be involved in it from just about any institution. The Church of Satan at high levels can have cross connections with Freemasonry at high levels, or the Rosicrucian orders at high levels. Again, it's really a tight-knit operating people who have the same ideological viewpoint of those four tenets that I outlined earlier. And they'll operate through whatever institutions provide them cover, secrecy, funds, the ability to network and take people of specific skill sets that they want to groom. See, that's what the Church of Satan is operating as, for just as an example. Most of the people involved in the Church of Satan do not understand how the worldwide hierarchical system, the network of Satanism is operating. They think they're just involved in a small organization. It does its own thing, and what they see, that's all there is to it. Okay? I'm not telling you the Church of Satan is running the world, okay? I'm telling you it's one of the front organizations that works with this network of very, very, very high financial elite people, okay, that have these very peculiar and destructive belief systems and worldviews, as I outlined, okay? And they will work through these front organizations like the Church of Satan to filtrate certain psychological characteristics and traits that they want in their organization for further grooming, so that they can put people that they feel that they can control, that they feel will carry out the terms of their agenda, into what I would call point positions of power as point men and point women. That's how this works. It is what you might call a Fabian-socialism plan of action, which is the long march through the institutions by getting certain point people in the positions of power and influence with your ideology, and then you can set policy and agenda that way. So, for example, the Church of Satan, the involvement I was at with it, low level, admittedly, although I was made the rank of priest. Okay, and when you go in at that ground level that interfaces with the public, this organization, the Church of Satan, that interfaces with the public, what they're doing is looking in the public. They're providing it's a psychological filtration system. If you just look at their application, how many detailed questions about, your likes, your interests, your habits, your state of mind, etc., your background is asked just in their primary introductory application. They're trying to identify personality traits, characteristics, and talents that they might be able to use higher up in the worldwide global satanic hierarchical network. So that's what these front organizations are doing. Freemasonry, somebody going into that at the suggestion of their uncle or grandfather, okay, will get involved, see a very low level of the organization, usually only the first 3 degrees if they even go that far, and they will just think of it as the old boys club, and a place that we got together weekly, with the other guys, and did some fun events, and did some strange rituals at some point, but they won't really ever penetrate it any further than that. This is the exoteric layer of any religion that is given to people. So you have to understand what lies at the core. And at the core, what we have is an elite class, an esoteric center circle that really understands how the entire network is working together, how it all fits together, and the actual agenda is known by that core inner circle. You could look at it as the core of the bullseye of the dartboard if you're looking at it in a circular way, or you could look at it as the top layer of the pyramid. It's a hierarchical structure, and ultimately they tie all the knowledge in at the highest levels, and how all of the other arms of it operate at lower levels. Those are the two main ways that the overall satanic network operates. It works through hierarchy and compartmentalization. Compartmentalization is, one hand not knowing what the other hand is doing. You have one front group over here that's doing this, you have another front group over here that's doing that, but only the people at the top of the hierarchical structure understand how those organizations are ultimately working together for the same agenda. This is how the worldwide network of Satanism essentially is structured, is organized. So organizations like Freemasonry, there's going to be good and bad within. I'm not going to tell people absolutely have nothing to do with it. As a matter of fact, I spent many weeks on my radio show breaking down esoteric Freemasonry and its symbols, and helping people to understand that, these are things that are really very deep moral allegories if we can decode them properly. They have a very deep, penetrating moral lesson to teach us. It's not to throw the baby out with the bathwater and say there is nothing good that can be gleaned or can be learned from these systems of knowledge. In fact, quite quite the opposite is the case. I consider myself what one might call an esoteric Freemason because I study the allegorical moral teachings of the tradition of Freemasonry. When you get involved with collectivist groupthink ideas, there's where you start running into some trouble. When you get into organized layers of it, when you get into the lodge system, then you see corruption operating. You see the bad people coming in to exploit or try to hold back the real knowledge from people. You see the money coming into it. Whenever something goes collectivist like that and groupthink like that, then you're getting into, you have to be very discerning regarding whether, something has remained pure or whether it's already corrupted and infiltrated.
Very interesting. I'm so glad to have you on talking about this, and I could go on forever, but I don't know how much time you have. But one question I do want to ask is, you hear about a lot of these sort of satanic sort of people, and David Icke talks a lot about this, and I really like a lot of the stuff, a lot of the information he brings to people. Sure. And he talks about how at these higher levels, and he talks about the Queen all the time, and the Queen of England, and all these people, and he says they're all child molesters. They actually do all these horrible, heinous things to children, and we're actually seeing in the UK now a lot of these politicians starting to get outed, and it started with that radio show guy, and now there's a huge scandal going on. So there is some of this is being brought to light now. But let me ask you, from your perspective, is child, whatever they do to children, is that a part of what a lot of these people do?
In the level of involvement that I went into, it most certainly was not. However, at higher levels within the worldwide satanic hierarchical network, as I simply refer to it as, pedophilia is one of the big agendas, and they do this for hard mind control purposes. There's something called trauma-based mind control, which can actually damage the psyche to a point where it kind of creates a split personality syndrome within the individual being tortured. When you do this, you can actually kind of take one of those personalities and work with it as a clean slate, as if, there were no experiences that it had ever gained. It's like kind of a new slate, to program with ideas and with worldviews and with instructions. And this is why they do this method of trauma-based mind control. And one of the favored techniques is to do it through, sexual molestation of children and bloodletting rituals with children involved. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that this goes on because of firsthand accounts that have been told to me by personal friends who were involved with Satanism at that level. One of the gentlemen I highly recommend people to check out is Jay Parker, who grew up in a family that participated in rituals such as this, and he shares in detail the absolute horrific scenarios that play out in a lot of these organizations that subscribe to this religion of Satanism. And without any question in my mind, that goes on at the higher levels of these groups. At the level that I was involved in, crimes were not partaken of. It was simply what I would refer to as psychodrama and energy transference through psychodramatic rituals. And it was a gathering and a networking of people with a similar agenda. The level of my involvement, that was it. But without question in my mind, pedophilia goes on at much higher levels of involvement in the satanic hierarchical network.
Very interesting. It's been strange to me that we've never really seen, or maybe there is some, but not much of hard proof or evidence of these acts taking place. And of course, there's things like the Bohemian Grove where they talk about a lot of things that happen there, but it hasn't really been caught on camera, or it hasn't even, you never have someone over here and tape record George Bush talking about how they're doing all these things. So I don't know if...
I think one of the biggest parts of that is that law enforcement is absolutely involved with this network at high levels. And a lot of that evidence gets seized and covered up. I think one of the best overwhelming example of hard evidence of these networks operating and the kind of sexual abuse that they perform upon children is the Franklin cover-up. If you check out that book by John DeCamp, he gets involved in how children were being trafficked from Boys Town to high levels of the Republican Party and politics in Washington, D.C. And DeCamp was trying to expose this and basically, really was pretty much ruined as a result of that, because this network does not want to be uncovered for what it really is. The word is getting out there, though, more and more. And I think England has the lead on us in that regard, for sure, which I definitely, praise them for. But we need to do more work in providing a lot of that hard evidence and people coming forward and standing strong in their truth and really exposing this network here in the United States. I think there's certain people who are doing it, a small amount, but more people, as people were coming forward to expose a lot of the molestation and child abuse going on within the Catholic Church here, and how that was covered up by high levels of the organized church and the Vatican. The same thing goes on, and it goes on through politics and it goes on through law enforcement, those cover-ups. So it would be very difficult to expose it because of how involved law enforcement is in all of this. But I think we can do it at the grassroots level that you're seeing starting to happen in the UK right now.
Yeah, for people out there, people like Luke Rudowski of We Are Change and Dan Dix of Press for Truth and James Corbett, all these people are spreading a lot of great information. We need more and more of those kind of people. So if you're out there and let's say you're younger and you're looking for something to do to make a difference in the world for a more positive, better world, try to get this information somehow and get it out there. We have the internet now. Before the internet, it would have been pretty much impossible. And that's why everything's changing so fast now that we have the internet, because people can get this information out there. Before, if you had a videotape of something some politician or banker or a religious person was doing to kids or something like that, you'd go to the BBC, which is run by the government, and say, right, hey, I've got this tape, and they'd probably just take it and threaten you, and that'd be the end of it. But now we have the internet, and you don't even have to put your name on it, just get it out there. That's so right. I hope more people get this out there so we can expose them, because to me, these people, it's interesting. I kind of know, like, I've always sensed that these people are evil. Well, they are evil by their actions, but not like satanic evil. I never really got that far. But when I do meet some of these sort of people, I do kind of meet politicians or whatever, and you can kind of tell they're evil. And but I've noticed that they're also very cowardly. Like you see Luke Rudowski walk up to David Rockefeller or any of these sort of elite kind of guys that are involved in these sort of things, and they scurry, they run away. That's right. Henry Kissinger, like they're cockroaches. They thrive in the darkness. That's right. So the more that we can expose them, and I know that's a big part of what you're doing, Mark. So thank you for your service. Let me ask you sort of a final question. Of course, talk about whatever you want, but I'm curious because you grew up in a sort of a Catholic or Christian religion, and then you converted, you rebelled and went all the way satanic. What's your belief on what life is? I'm very curious on this topic because I'm trying to figure it out for myself. I know I probably will never figure it out, but I'm curious what you think about, like that's your website. What on earth is happening? What is this? What is life? Why is all this things happening?
We're spiritual beings having a physical experience upon earth to learn and to grow in consciousness. And what we are here to learn is the objective difference between right behavior and wrong behavior. And we are here to align our free will with those dynamics so that we can learn how to consciously co-create our experience together. Right now, what we are doing here on earth is we are unconsciously co-creating an experience because we are in ignorance of the laws that ultimately govern the physical domain. And the laws that govern the physical domain are more than just physical laws. They are laws that govern whether or not someone's experience is going to be based in freedom or in slavery and bondage, based upon their free will choice to either enact right action in their lives or wrong action in their lives. It's what I call the law of freedom that's operating on the grandest scale in all societies. As morality increases in the aggregate in society, the aggregate freedom of that society increases. As morality declines or wanes or decreases in the aggregate in any given society, freedom is going to decline or wane, and slavery is going to increase in that society. These are absolutely unchangeable, unwavering laws of nature. People have to understand that there is a higher power that's operating in the world. I don't care whether anybody wants to refer to it as God. You could refer to it as the underlying intelligence in nature. You could call it nature itself. You could call it law. I think law is just simply a good word for people to understand that there is a higher force operating than just the human will. Okay? There are boundary conditions that operate in the universe. I refer to these boundary conditions as natural law, the laws of nature. And there's another dynamic that's operating in the universe, in conjunction, in partnership with the natural laws. And that is the dynamic of free will, which is operating in sentient beings. And we have free will because we have the capacity for holistic intelligence. And we have the choice. Do we recognize the laws of morality that are already in place? And if we operate with them in a particular regard, we're going to get one result. We're going to get the result that we say we want, which is order and peace and freedom and harmony and prosperity, etc. If we operate out of order with those laws, if we operate in total disregard of them and in ignorance of them, we're going to get a different set of results. And the results are going to be suffering and chaos and slavery, etc. So this is what I explain in all of my presentations and in my podcasts. I simply refer to the umbrella term natural law. People have called it moral law, God's law, the laws of nature. Whatever you want to refer to it as is fine by me. It's all the same thing. I like the term natural law because it kind of expresses that it's going on everywhere in nature, everywhere in the natural world, everywhere in the universe. This is what my work basically centers upon and focuses upon. This is the information that the dark occultists understand how it works, rebel against it, and want to turn it upside down on its head and invert it all, prevent everybody else from understanding it so they generate nothing but suffering and slavery for themselves, while they replace the natural law with their own laws and set themselves up as the rulers, the ruling class. So behind the corridors of financial and political power, there is the realm of the occult world of knowledge that is being not even so much hidden from people in today's world of information, but they dissuade people from looking into it and say, oh, there's nothing to that. That's just some quaint religion and you need not concern yourself with that. Ultimately, this knowledge is the most secreted away knowledge that exists on the earth, that has been hidden for thousands of years. And it is the knowledge that if we make common sense, we will level the playing field and we will create a world of true freedom in probably under a few generations. And, it's doable, it's possible, that knowledge is knowable. My suggestion is people check out the work that I've put forward in my podcast series. Go to whatonearthishappening.com and listen to the podcasts in order without skipping around, because it's a very structured, stepwise, initiatory progression into this knowledge. And if you do that at your own pace, I think a whole new worldview will open up for you, and you'll kind of get a sense of what lies behind just the political and financial aspects of the control system. So, Jeff, I just want to thank you again for providing the platform for me to speak to your listening audience. And you asked a lot of great questions, and I had a really good time.
Yeah, thank you. I also did as well. It was fascinating, and I haven't listened to all your podcasts, so I'm going to try to find the time to do that. I think a lot of people in day-to-day sort of life, they're like, should I go to college to learn something? It's like, no, just go to Mark's website and you get it all right there, and that's the important knowledge. You're not going to get your Bachelor of Arts of Uselessness or Women's Studies or whatever you're going to take 4 years of wasting your time. So yeah, this information is, as Mark said, it's out there, and it hasn't been before. So we have this opportunity. Now they're trying to shut down the internet, which you can see it every day. They're trying to do something. Google with their slogan, "Don't be evil." Kind of, when you say your slogan is "Don't be evil," you're probably evil, because and in many ways what they're doing.
They protest too much, right?
Yeah, you doth protest too much. Very good. I hope we're having an Acapulco again this coming year in 2016. I hope you'll consider coming down. You're the kind of person that I'd really like to get out there more. So thank you very much.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Great. Thank you very much. So this, if you like this information, all you have to do is share, like, subscribe to this channel, share it with your friends, get this information out there. That's how we can change the world and expose the occult, the hidden, which is actually out there, right out there in the open. We just have to shine the light on it. And we can, they'll scatter like cockroaches. I've seen it before. So that's how we can make the world a better place and make our everything better. It'd just be better. So that's it for Anarchast, your home for anarchy on the internet. Peace, love, and anarchy.